This is problem number 3 from section 7.4. It says use the given information to find sine of s plus t, tangent of s plus t, and the quadrant of s plus t. They give us some information. They say that cosine s is 4 over 5, sine t is negative 12 over 13, and s and t are in quadrant 4. So what does it mean that s and t are in quadrant 4? It means that in this quadrant, we know that quadrant 4, cosine is positive and sine is negative. So we kind of have two different problems that we're combining into one. Let's go ahead and draw these out. So cosine of s we know is 4 over 5. It's in quadrant 4, so we can draw its graph like this. We know its triangle looks like so. If cosine of s is 4 over 5, we know that this is 4 and this is 5. The one thing we don't know is what's this, right? So this is for cosine s. So for sine t, we know that it's also in quadrant 4. But for it looks like this. It's negative 12 over 13, so it's negative 12, and this is 13. We don't know what the cosine portion of this is. So let's find those real quick. Well, for this one, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. We can say that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we can say 4 squared plus b squared equals 5 squared. That's 16 plus b squared is 25. Subtract the 16, we get b squared equals 9. Square root it, we get b equals 3. So this side is 3, but it's not positive because we're in quadrant 4. It's negative 3. So that tells us that we know that cosine s is equal to 4 over 5. But we now know sine s is negative 3 over 5. And that's going to help us when we go to do sine s plus t and tan s plus t. Because we obviously are going to need sine s, so we're going to need that fraction. Let's do the same thing over here. If we use the Pythagorean theorem on this one, it would be negative 12 squared plus b squared equals 13 squared. This gives you 144 plus b squared equals 169. Subtract it over b squared equals 25. Square root it, b equals 5. So this tells us now that we know sine t, we already knew sine t is negative 12 over 13, but now we know cosine t, and cosine t is 5 over 13. Now remember, s and t are standing for like two different angles. All right, so they're two completely different angles here. And these are the fractions that go with those angles. So they want us to evaluate for part A. They want us to evaluate sine s plus t. Okay, let's use our sum and difference formulas. So sine s plus t. So we have sine alpha plus beta, so that means that this is sine s cosine t plus cosine s sine t. So now we can go ahead and evaluate this using our fractions that we know. We can say that we know that sine s is that negative 3/5, which we figured out using our triangle. We know cosine t is 5 over 13 plus cosine s, which is 4 over 5, and sine t, which is negative 12 over 13. Now remember our goal, we're trying to find s plus t, right? S plus t here. We're using these fractions to do that. We can evaluate that now to be, that's negative 15 over 65. Well, I'm going to end up with a minus, so minus 4 times 12 is 48 over 65. So I end up with negative 63 over 65. So sine of s plus t is negative 63 over 65. All right, so we figured out part A. Part B, now this is something that you haven't seen yet. They say tangent s plus t. So I've been showing you the sum and difference formulas for sine and cosine. But I kind of skipped the tangent sum and difference formulas until now. Let's go ahead and pull those out. They're similar. But remember with tangent, we've got sine over cosine, like that whole thing going on. So the tangents are going to be fractions because, you know, the tangent, like the normal function being sine over cosine. So they want us to find tan s plus t. So tan s plus t. All right. So if tan s plus t, that means that we've got this one here. So we're going to say tan s plus tan t over 1 minus tan s tan t. All right, that wasn't too bad. Now, the problem is we don't know tan s or tan t, right? We don't know tan s, we don't know tan t. We only know cosine s, sine t, cosine t. We can find those though. We know that tan s is going to equal sine s over cosine s. Right? That's just an identity that we all know. So we can say that that is negative 3 over 5 over cosine s, which is 4 over 5, which we can write as negative 3/5 times 5 over 4, right? Flip the bottom fraction, multiply, and we end up with negative 3 over 4. So we know tan s equals negative 3 over 4. Okay, what about tan t? I'm going to write it down here so I have room to write above. So tan t, same process. We got sine t over cosine t. So we get negative 12 over 13 divided by 5 over 13, which is going to be negative 12 over 13 times 13 over 5, which is negative 12 over 5. So we know that tan t is negative 12 over 5. All right, that means we can go ahead and start solving up here. So let's go ahead and say that we know this, so we know that this equals tan s, which is negative 3 over 4, plus tan t, which we knew tan t is negative 12 over 5, over 1 minus tan s tan t. Well, tan s tan t is negative 3 over 4 times negative 12 over 5. All right, now I'm running out of room, so I'm going to kind of slide this over and streamline this to the side here. So we're just looking at this portion now to evaluate. So this will give you negative 3 over 4 and negative 12 over 5. Well, I need to multiply this by 5 over 5, and that would be negative 15 over 20. Multiply this by 4 over 4, and that'd be minus 48 over 20 over, when I multiply these on the bottom, I get 1 Well, this will give you a positive, so it's going to be 3 negatives will make it 1 negative there. And this would be 36 over 20. Okay, let's go ahead and subtract those, and we get negative 63 over 20 over, let's make this 20 over 20 minus 36 over 20. That's going to equal negative 63 over 20 over, when I do 20 over 20 minus 36 over 20, that's negative 16 over 20. I'm going to flip and multiply, so that's negative 63 over 20 times negative 20 over 16. The two negatives gives me a positive. The 20s cancel. I'm left with 63 over 16 for my answer. So tan, and you can't see it, but tan S plus T is 63 over 16. I'm going to kind of write these at the very top here so that we can see it. So if we say that we knew that sine S plus T equals, we knew that was negative 63 over 65. We now know tan S plus T is 63 over 16. So this is part A. Part B. Now let's put in part C. It says, what quadrant is S plus T in? So I'm going to kind of move this over, cover up that work for a second. These were our answers for part A and B. So part C, what quadrant is S plus T in? So this is actually pretty easy to figure out. If sine is negative, we know that sine being negative is in quadrant 3 or quadrant 4. Right? So sine being negative, we're in either 3 or 4. Tangent being positive only occurs, because of sine divided by cosine, only occurs in quadrants 1 or 3. Well, the only one they share there is quadrant 3. So that means that we are actually in quad 3. So the answers to the problem were sine of S plus T, negative 63 over 65, tan S plus T, 63 over 16, and the quadrant of S plus T, the angle when you add those two angles together, is quadrant 3.